Article 155, Clause 1, does enjoin the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Uganda to present to the country through the Speaker of Parliament the fiscal year or the financial year budget within a given period of time. The Honorable Matia Kasaja did fulfill his constitutional mandate and presented to the country through, indeed, the Parliament of Uganda, our fiscal year for, of course, the next financial year. And of course, the priorities are stated are around human capital development, issues around peace and security, among others. So we convened this afternoon to explore the nitty-gritties of this particular document. Does it address the needs of the young people, which, of course, you know by now constitute over 75% of this country's population? And put all this into perspective, viewers, is a panel of eminent young people that is now my pleasure to introduce to you. And in no particular order, the only lady on the show this afternoon is Alice Namale. Alice is a student of law at Makerere University and also the prestigious 88th Minister of Constitutional and Justice Affairs of the Students' Guild. Alice, we are happy to have you.
Happy to be here with you.
How do you feel after a while?
Well, it's always a pleasure to be back.
Yeah.
I can say for a fact that it never gets old. Yeah. It's a fresh feeling every time.
Yeah, thank you. And we are glad you feel that way. Next to Alice is Ivan Masawi from the Forum for Democratic Change Youth League and an aspiring vice chairperson of the Eastern region of the Youth League. Ndugu, karibu.
Yes, thank you. It is great to be back again. Thanks to Center for Constitutional Governance, thanks to Civic Space TV. Great thanks to our viewers and to our host. I'm really grateful to be back on the panel. It had been some good time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for spending the time. Next to myself is a gentleman by the names Eria Were. Eria is an accountant by profession. He also is doing his MBA at Uganda Christian University, but also very passionate about, current affairs. And this is indeed current affairs. Eria, we are happy to have you.
Thank you, Chidega. I'm happy to be here and to share my views on the budget and on the fiscal policy of Uganda 2023-2024. And just happy to be here for the first time.
Yeah, well, since you have the mic already, let us begin right away. And I'll ask a general question. Just, your thoughts. What do you make of the budget? Just generally speaking, before we get into the nitty-gritties of, what has gone to education or healthcare. What is your general perception of the budget? Is it more of a ritual or, it has great meaning? Eria.
Thank you. Perhaps for me, the biggest experience I have is being a Ugandan, and I will not lie to you that this budget is more of a ritual, but at the same time, when you look at it closely, it is now, for the first time in many years, we are looking at this budget focusing on households having more income to raise. That is like, for example, the whole program it's aiming at making sure that all households have enough capital, enough revenue, and in turn, this revenue will be brought back to the government in terms of revenue collection. So this budget for the first time is looking at households with the new programs coming in, OPDM program coming in for the youth to all households to come in, the parish development model as you know it. So this, as many people are calling it more of a campaign tool, but at the end of the day, the Muntu needs to benefit out of this. At the end of the day, when we are all after debating and all that, I urge all Ugandans to go down and we benefit from this program, because it is self-centered to us to benefit, not for politicians to quote, argue here and there. But we need to look at these things with a broader mindset. Not only do we have to look at it as a political tool, but how do we benefit from it as Ugandans? That's my perspective about this. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Alice, your general perception.
My general perception is that as much as you do not want us to first go into the nitty-gritties, there is one nitty-gritty that really stands out for me, and that is our debt as a country. It is very alarming how much debt we have. And, looking long term, we do not see any way how we're going to have that debt reduce, because every year we have a budget that has payment of debt. But then every year, again, we are borrowing more debt. Basically, it is going to be a recurring process. It seems like an ending loop of debt and all that. So I think that as much as the government is trying really hard to also raise the income of households, they should also there should have been a bit more focus on how to reduce the debt burden
Would debt be an issue per se? Because you know that America is highly indebted. You know that? They're actually mooting the idea that we should extend the debt ceiling because their debt is very high. But can you doubt their economic strength as a country? I don't think you can. So I think the issue would be that when you borrow, how do you use the money? You know, like, do you put it into productivity, or you're borrowing to pay salaries?
Well, it's exactly more or less what I'm pointing towards, right? Because when you borrow, even from banks, very basic principle, when you go to a bank to borrow money, they do not give people money when they say, I'm borrowing money to finance my kwanjula. Because a kwanjula in itself is not a money-generating activity. It is going to take money, it's a liability. It will take money, it will not make money in return. So even as we are borrowing, what I'm talking about, how sustainable is this entire borrowing thing, is the fact that we keep on borrowing and we do not have an end goal. We do not have we do not have a way we're going to be returning that money, because the first place, as you're borrowing that money, it isn't going to ventures that are going to help us make more money as a country. Yes.
So to you, significantly, is that the overall budget, the biggest issue that outstands is our debt burden. And I agree with you, because we are out of that budget around actually more than 30% of that budget goes to debt refinancing.
27%.
Yes, 27% goes to debt refinancing. But the issue therein is the domestic debt arrears created and how it cripples these commercial entities. I would not have a big issue with foreign debt, but the domestic debt and those areas that are always outstanding, to me, I think it somehow cripples the private sector. But
to interject a bit, you see, we are in an economy that is credit set. You know, to attain a car, basically even abroad, people are on credit. To get a simple phone, he gets it on credit. That's a debt. To attain a property, an apartment, it's credit. So basically, we are looking at also moving into a developed nation. So having a credit nation or highly indebted nation, that's not a problem. The problem would be because we are being indebted so that we become self-reliant in the future. But the problem with, as I tell you, my biggest experience being Ugandan. So you know that, perhaps Chidega, you know that if your father has ever gotten a loan anywhere to finance your fees, finance your housing, by the end of the day, the product is you. So at the end of the day, for Uganda, the product should be making sure that Uganda is self-reliant. Like it does its own thing, and because the debts have to be there. We had so many wars affecting us. We have had so many challenges as Uganda. So these debts to come in, the 80 trillion, it is very big money. But the problems we have, that we need more money at the end of the day. But all this money, we need it to make sure we are self-reliant. Like we do our own production, the market, our goods are competitive on the market, basing because of this money we get. But the problem is that when we get this money, me and you both, we know that I think it ends in Kampala and maybe in Barara and Jinja, a few districts. So we need to look at a broader perspective. Yes, people are complaining debt, but we don't have enough capacity to produce revenue to make sure we run our activities. So we need this funding.
May I?
Okay, yes.
May I ask a small question? Ever since we started borrowing as a country, how could you rate our journey to self-reliance? Because you're saying the purpose of our getting of debt, right, is for achievement of self-reliance, which is totally okay. But how much of this debt has actually gone into realization of self-reliance?
Now, the problem is not the debt. problem
The
is
usage.
the human resource. And basically, maybe the problem is also the policies we have, and not that a bit more strict and more transparent and more making sure that people use these funds in the right way. Yeah. So the problem may not be even. I think Chidega, my whole solution would have a new constitution to run so that we
Fair
have
enough. Fair enough. I think you two have made very substantive points. But out to hear from you, Ivan.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chidega. Our budget this year began with a theme of full monetization of Uganda's economy, taking agriculture, industrialization, in digital transformation and access. Yet the previous theme was to push Uganda to a middle income status. You fail to understand how we have had a shift and yet the accountability to a normal Ugandan citizen who is a taxpayer needs to receive accountability at the end of the day. We saw a growth in the budget from 49 trillion to 52.7 trillion. That in itself communicates there is a growing appetite. I don't know whether in expenditure, whether in revenue collection, or whether in production. But honestly, when I sat down and listened to the Prime Minister, to the Finance Minister, then went through the report, sectoral analysis of sectors, the levels of productivity are still low. When you look at income generating activities themselves, the economic stimulus, if you look at an economic stimulus that is almost targeting something like a parish development model as the biggest investment, then Permanent Secretary Minister of Finance justifies that there is an economic stimulus of up to 2.7 trillion. But when you look, most of the costs are still on administrative, even where they are allocating for stimulus. That is quite still challenging, but still with a big deficit of import to export. We still rely on 7.2 trillion on imports and 4 point something, a very big deficit of around 3 trillion shillings when it comes to that. Then even when...
So meaning we are importing more than
we are importing more, and the deficit is huge.
Okay.
So it means our production levels, government needed to put enough manpower in addressing key sectors of agriculture, key sectors of industrialization, but local-based value addition. And I can say that is why you see the strategy of parish development model brought into play. But when you look at these programs, it is not a new program. In the last budget, we had a Myoga, similarly with a budget of around 900 billion.
We still have a Myoga in this.
And they are being funded as a government priority. So the basic way to call to account, government would have accounted would have a model to maybe broaden and maybe equip better using the previous programs to identify loopholes. I happen to have been back in Mbale, where I come from, around May, and I saw how people were fighting to get this money. People used to sleep at banks. Someone lives village, he has never received a million shilling, he moves barefooted, he's coming to receive money. The first thing he will look out is consumption. He will buy sandals, he will buy bread, he will buy a kilo of meat. But the challenge this government has, the response to appetite, and yet in a serious government, you need to create an environment for fast. So that has been a serious challenge. But basically, the budget itself, I think it is always one evening to excite Ugandans, to call people to conscious, to call people maybe to observe that there is a constitutional mandate to feel, let's give ears in and listen. But honestly, to a life of a normal Ugandan outside there, when you look at the benefits, they are still limited. The tax measures, you feel sorry. that even if you are you don't see any form of more innovations, because if you see the debate they had was to reduce people who are getting exemptions. That is not an innovation in widening the base. Innovations should be practical, that you're going to raise money, not you're going to fight in ways of reducing where you've been losing, but you're widening. So it is quite challenging. But given it was an increase, the word growth can take over the whole afternoon. There is growth in this, there is growth in this. But my request is to the implementers, let the growth be felt, because it is key. As young people here, when you sit and look for your package in the budget, you will find there is no clear package addressing, because it is made the paper that is created to show it is addressing the environment of the nation. You will see industrialization, this has been set. You will see 249 billion set for that, trade and commerce. But when you see the breakage and then you hear they are for skilling hubs are political weapons to skill a few, to award some people who never got jobs, it becomes a little disturbing.
Okay, we shall examine the veracity of your statements. Yeah, Ivan, thank you for that, and we shall evaluate the veracity of your submissions, because I have reservations about certain things, but much more later. For now, I want to introduce to you our viewers the fourth panelist, and that is Ndugu Kato Laban. Laban is a graduate of economics from Makerere University, but also he served formerly as the 86th Minister of Security of the Students' Guild. So now we have two ministers here. Honorable ministers. So, Ndugu, you phoned us when we are trying to evaluate your overall perception about the budget. 52.7 trillion. It's an increment, but does it address the needs of perhaps the young people or the ordinary Ugandan out there?
Yeah, thank you, moderator. It's a great pleasure to be part of this discussion. Surely, I'm so sorry for coming in late, but nevertheless, I will not start with analyzing how the budget is important to the wananchi, but I will first talk about the background of how we came up with the budget. We do recall that the budget cycle started in 2022 September 2022, because it starts a year before. Of course, we didn't see in early January the Minister of Finance presenting the budget framework paper for the financial year 2023-2024 as required by the law. Then we saw around between March and April different departments and ministries presenting different ministerial statement that talks about what they did in the previous year as according to the money which was allocated to them, and what they expect to do in the next financial year. Then we saw in mid-May, the Parliament passing and approving the budget estimate. At first it was, I think, 50.7 around there million, which was later which later came to 52.7 million. I remember there was an argument from the opposition side.
The budget committee itself.
Yes, but the majority, the minority members arguing that why are you increasing the budget from 52.6 to 52.7 without showing where the revenue are coming from. But of course, as you know, it is always the habit of the ruling government to bypass the processes, the system within this country. Of course, they continue. And that is how the budget was approved by Parliament in mid-May. Of course, we didn't, through the approval, we also saw how the Parliament of Uganda hijacked the process, whereby you find that some departments of government never...
Come again? Parliament hijacked the process?
Yeah, Parliament did not, at a certain point, did not follow what is supposed to be done as according to the law.
For example?
For example, here, some departments of government, different departments, were appropriated money to, but without presenting the budget estimate for their expenditure. For example, they appropriated money to certain departments without them presenting their estimates as required by the law. That was the process. That's why I said that the process was hijacked. The law was not followed. So many, I think 50% of 50% of different government agencies were not able to present their budget estimate for this next financial year. Of course, we saw now the budget day, where every Ugandan always pays attention to hear what is shared in different sectors. When I look at this budget, is that majority of Ugandans are not aware of what happens from the start, when the budget cycle starts, until the last day. People wake up, the majority, that we are going to Kororo to listen to the budget without knowing where. The procedure. People are not aware. And it is the responsibility of the ministry in charge to make sure that they organize different seminars, conferences, to make sure that in the Manawinchi down is aware of what happens. Because the budget itself does not happen on that day. It starts the year before. We also see through the budget that the debt, of course, the debt, domestic debt for Uganda, still that here we go to commercial banks to borrow money to pay the money that we borrowed in the previous year from the same commercial bank, from the different commercial banks. Are we getting the scenario? So here, we shall go to commercial bank, get money to pay the loan accrued from previous year. And to me, I see that has a crisis to our private sector.
Yeah, sure. And we shall dig deeper into that later. But Alice, Laban raises a question of procedure. I don't know. What would be the implications of, for example, not following the set out legal procedure in terms of a budgetary process? I know that we have a Budget Act, we have a Public Finance Management Act, and many other laws. So what would be the implication if at all the alleged abuse of procedure were right? What would be the ultimate outcome?
Ultimately, as is with everything that is not done within the law, it is what is called acting ultra vires. This means that you've acted outside of the confines of the powers or the mandate stipulated by the law. That means that when you act ultra vires, you've acted outside the law, and in effect, everything you've done is more or less null and void. But like again, Laban has said, he has said that the government has made it a habit to keep on bypassing all of these procedure stipulations, and they somehow get away with it. So we may not see the implications per se, really, but it should be in an ideal world, in the utopia, in a Ugandan utopia where we are very constitutional oriented. We follow the law. The rule of law is as we claim it is. Then it would punch a whole lot of holes in the entire budget procedure to the point that it could be nullified. Yes.
Yes.
First, I want to thank my brother for putting it clearly. You know, a budget is a plan, and the Ministry of Finance does economic planning and monitoring on behalf of Ugandans. The members of parliament who do the appropriation as one of their jobs do it on behalf of Ugandans. So whenever procedure is not exhausted, like my brother has put it, first there are loopholes from the reality, the true reflection of reality. Once you pass a budget without meeting some of the MDAs, without meeting institutions, eventually these institutions will not be productive. You will find you only being able to meet administratives. For example, I can give you Mulago or Ministry of Health, where the budget has decreased or been cut. If there was enough interaction between the budget committee and Ministry of Health, it would create avenues or innovations of seeing where to raise money, because we should all be aware that they are also going to be increasing cuts in donations to this ministry, which has been the mother beneficiary of donations from the outside world. But because...
And why do you anticipate that?
Why I anticipate that is because basically Uganda, most of our donors are victims of some of the policies that we have passed. And to us, it is to our benefit, but to them, they may make some of these decisions because we have seen warnings from the President of the United States trying to bring up threats of cutting budgets and what some of these entities benefiting. But let's leave that aside. The issue of procedure in the Constitution is put as a way of fulfilling a plan to meet its, I think, fit for purpose. Whenever something is not followed procedurally, there will always be loopholes that make it unfit for purpose. The reason Uganda's debt or Uganda's expenditure levels have been increasing in the budget annually, but the levels of a story to tell, or the output, I should say, has not increased at the faster. The levels of production, you find even a president fighting his own budget. That, me, I don't support borrowing. But who passes borrow? Who signs? You find members of parliament fighting that, we are not supporting. But then you wonder, who was borrowing? I was, to some extent, when I listened to the president's speech, surprised. Who supports borrowing in this country? If you, the head of state, who assigns the signatory? The members of parliament who appropriate and pass the borrowing itself, you're busy denying. Then where did these loans come from? All that is as a result of skipping procedural issues when doing planning. Because a budget is a plan. It is a financial plan of a country. Whenever it is not given the necessary time as allocated in the Constitution, the necessary procedure, the output will not be worthy to the taxpayer who pays you to do that on his behalf. But it will also create that very environment we saw at Kololo, where the president is denying what the Minister of Finance has read. Me, I don't support borrowing. These people borrow. A way of everyone is feeling to shy away from it. But these are the very individuals who sat in executive and passed that. No, you saw a budget where he has stated it very well. 2 days to presenting it to parliament, there is an extension of 2 trillion shillings. And now you find the budget committee sat for 1 hour to analyze 2 trillion shillings. But this is money which, if in Uganda, is really properly planned for, how it is going to come into play, from where it is going to be got as revenue to where it is going to be put, it would change. For example, 2 trillion alone put in, for example, there are even sectors which are not having levels of amounting to 2 trillion. But the way you see figures being played with is not healthy. It shows mass indiscipline. It shows lack of planning. It is still a very serious issue.
Okay, fair enough. Were, I just now to get into the nitty-gritties a little bit. And if you look at, for example, the healthcare sector, there is a commitment to, for example, pay the interns. And Kato Laban, I recall seeing your tweets about this. So are you now happy that, for example, the medical interns are now getting budgetary allocation, but also the in-house medical staff, their money has actually been allocated to?
No.
But also their commitments to upgrade, for example, healthcare center 2 to healthcare center 3, and then health center 3 to 4, and but also there is a plan to advance the Mulago Cancer Institute, into a fully fledged cancer, referral center. So where the health sector, because I mean, if a government can take care of the health of its people, education, I think it has uplifted the biggest baggage, because people fall sick, people need education. So I mean, those social services. So the healthcare sector, was critical attention given to it?
Thank you. Before I go to the health sector, I would like maybe to throw some light to Michael to some part of about the budget. When it looks at our budget is 52.7 trillion, right? And now when you look at the domestic revenues, the money we are supposed to raise on our own, amounting to 29.7 trillion.
Yes.
And then the from domestic tax revenue coming to 27 trillion.
7.4 trillion.
Around 27 point something. So you look at the balance is we have to come up with some figure where it has to come to
the whole budget comes to 30 trillion.
Yeah, so we find that the balance has to come from somewhere. Yeah. So as I will still insist, borrowing is not a problem to me. But the problem would be, how do you utilize that fund? Yeah, Now, for example, we are talking about, let me go back to the health sector. In 2017, I come from Jinja. There was a government program of upgrading this health center 2 to health center 3s.
Yeah.
We saw that bidding went through. There was construction of these entities in these various districts, local districts, and that was done, at the time. But when you look at, you see the problems of the government. There are very many. You construct a health center 3. Before you know it, there are no drugs. Before you know it, the interns are not paid. Before you know it, the doctors themselves, the major people, are not paid. So this budget, for the first time, we see that at least they have allocated that. Though still, we have those. I can still go back and say, our policies to, the decentralization policy of executing these things to the local Ugandan. There is a lot of the time lag, the gap. By the time I wait for these drugs to come around, my citizen has died. A lady in the labor ward has not had enough attention due to not paying the interns in time. So basically, I have a feeling that we need more of laws that are going to, to put these things in a streamline. Because these policies, yes, NRM says the policies are good, but as the youth, are they good for us? Right now, we're more knowledgeable than the rest of the old cadres. We have the knowledge. This is a chance for us to streamline our own future. Chidega, you were in university politics at one time.
Is the National Youth Council.
Yes. I am
a moderator here.
I can challenge you that once you got in that office, when you look at that budget, you just edited figures. If I'm not wrong. I was in Makere politics. You just change a bit of figures. They say the budget, you should not exceed 300 million. And then you just say, let's just change this. But the whole thing is not to change the figures, is to change our focus. What is the priority now? As for Uganda, is the priority having households having income in the house, like in the in their communities? Or the priority, is it making sure people have what to eat? Are the priorities the health sector? Let us have a priority for a budget.
So looking at the health sector, was it prioritized?
Not as much as we would want it to be prioritized. You know, up to now, we have bigger problems in the health sector than what we see now. You see, right now, you know, we are lucky
But I mean, if there are commitments to advance the status of healthcare
I think as
centers.
someone in the health sector,
No, first, hold up. I want to bring in Kato because Laban was a very strong advocate for the medical interns. And money has been put there for them, but also for the other officials. But also there are plans to advance the infrastructure of the healthcare sector to ensure that every parish has a health sector too, a health center too, functioning and, you know.
Moderator, one, I want first to disagree with you. When you say that the money has been put there, which money? For what?
It has been allocated.
For?
Medical interns.
For?
What do you mean for?
The 22 billion that the Minister of Finance said, those are money in arrears. 22.6 billion. That means that it was for previous interns that they are demanding the government. That is the money. But for this financial year, they have not provided almost 80.86 point something billion that is needed.
Maybe they'll provide it in next year's arrears.
Because when you look, you see, you are analyzing only the part of health, but we have to analyze the human capital development budget. And we look, because those sectors as part of human capital development are interlinked. They cannot act independently. Education, health. How are you getting? When you look at the budget for this financial 2023-2024, the government did provide 9.5 trillion, equivalent to 18%. But when you look at governance and security, it provided 7.5, which is equivalent to 14%. What does it mean? That is, it is only the difference of 4%. Even as we look at the budget, where the human capital development is taking the big share of the budget, but in reality, what within that budget?
Human capital development.
Yes.
You mean? It's about, you know, paying the salaries of health workers, education,
but
teachers.
What is the priority right now? Interns. That department, that sector should be given priority, because you don't tell me that governance and security
is more.
It's not more. But when you look at the difference, I expected the government to come up with maybe with 5.5. Then provide money for the medical intern for this financial year, because they are paying arrears. For these are the people who are demanding the money for the other year. Even some of them have already moved on. They have started working. But it is only the money which were provided. As of today, our colleagues, more than 1,300. Of course, the government didn't say that the number, I think it is 1,079. But of course, the actual, according to some sources from different universities, when you total it up, it exceeds that. All of them are home. Those are the people that do most of the work in hospitals. All together. But the government only provided 22.6 billion, which were arrears for the altogether. So, human capital development may look on paper to have the biggest share, but in reality, what the activities within that sector, according to the budget, according to the money which was appropriated, do not show that surely in this country, the health sector, the education sector is not a priority. Rather than.
But Laban, to be fair to those who sat down to make this budget, is that, like you've ably said, under the human capital development, therein falls the salaries or the employment or the
whole
payment
of education and
of,
health.
of education, health, and etc. So, and on top of that, there is a separate entity in the budget catering for the healthcare sector. So I find it a bit disingenuous and dishonest for you to say that the healthcare sector isn't prioritized at all.
If it is a
And yet there are plans to advance healthcare sectors.
Of course, we know how the government has been dealing, promising every day that we are going to work on internal. Is the money provided? Because you see, we say we don't go with the commitments when it comes to people's health.
We don't.
Are you getting? You cannot. Is the money there to save people? No. As per now, it's not. That means it's not a priority. If it was a priority, they would have reduced the budget for State House by 86.6 billion. Needed by? We say, you know, this and this. The money, let me give you an example. The expenditure for the government agencies to buy cars and everything was reduced. Where was the money taken?
But still,
because it's not, they are not going to buy cars. They are not going to buy such things. But where was the money taken? Are we together? Where was the money taken? Because if the government of NRM is interested in improving the income of people and the household, they should all focus on human capital development.
Okay, fair enough. I want to hear from
also, by ending, I want to also to disagree with comrade, my comrade here, when he said that borrowing is not bad.
Per se.
It may be bad to a certain circumstances. Of course, I'm not saying that there is no any country that doesn't borrow. But for Uganda, the initiative that they take to borrow are very bad. One, that here you are borrowing money, mostly you are concentrating on domestic borrowing only. And the debt is always increasing every year and most time. Borrowing is bad if it's not careful. It's bad because you are borrowing from the commercial bank. To you, do you think the commercial bank are interested in giving loans to government or to private sector?
Of course, to government.
Why do you think? It's because of the risk attached to that loan. Because that means that the commercial bank will always borrow government because they are sure that they can always recover money. The risk attached to that loan when they borrow government is lower compared to the private individual. That means the private sector will not get loan. How are we going to stimulate production? How are we going to stimulate a production?
That is why there is some money in Uganda Development Bank.
What?
That is why there is money in Uganda Development Bank.
How many private individuals or private people from private sector
can
go
attend
there?
Don't
get that money.
Do they not go because they don't have the knowledge about it, or
they have the knowledge? But do you know that even there is the requirements itself? There is even some of the capital that you have to do is make sure that. But me as a person who has my mudala somewhere or my shop, I'm ready to go to the capital bank, to the commercial bank to get the loan. But because the government focuses on these commercial banks to get them, that means it reduces the capital. It will reduce the capital.
But also the interest rate is
the interest rate also is very high. So borrowing is very, very bad. But I will say that the focus, the priority of this NRM government is not to improve the household income, and also is not for the capital development, but it is for some security.
I can interject maybe.
No. Hold up. I want to bring in Alice, and of course, Laban. I understand where he's coming from. Yeah? Someone who has been mentored in the ANT. but
No, but this is
that
reality.
aside-
It's not about the party.
Yes, no,
Allied too.
of course.
Even the people within the
issue,
NRA
of
should
course,
be open their
of
eyes
course,
and see
of-
that it's for the
The
interest
issue
of
of
Uganda,
credit to
not
happiness
for the
is
highlights.
very key
I am
when
just
it
pulling
comes
your
to
legs.
that.
Yes.
But Alice, the healthcare sector, you know, I read somewhere that about 15 or 14 women die every day giving birth, you know. So with the way the healthcare sector has been handled, do you think it creates a leap of hope for the young women or the issues of healthcare that I believe largely affect more the women? So the healthcare sector.
From the budget in itself, it might. My biggest issue is on whether what is on paper for the budget is what is going to actually happen in reality. I think it gives what I'd like to call false hope, you know, that things are going to get better. And it provides all of these overly ambitious structures, I should say, that are not really sustainable per se. Just like one of the panelists was saying, we're going to upgrade healthcare 2 centers to 3, right? So what this probably looks like for the average Ugandan is making a bigger structure, putting maybe a few more doctors, and the building looks better, right? Then from there, what next? The amount of drugs that has to go into that center has to increase. Yes? The pay grade, right? You cannot have a doctor of a clinic and you're paying them, let me say, 500,000. Then you upgrade the clinic to a hospital and you still pay them 300,000. That's right, the same amount of money. You get my point. So the pay grade has to also increase of the doctors they are in, right?
Human resource.
Exactly. I do not think that what this budget looks at is that in totality. I don't think it looks at all of that. I think what it looks at is what I call what I can call the word is eluding, superficial. Yes, very superficial, very surface, you know, not really inquiring into the sustainability of these programs. That's why I'm calling it false hope, because women out there are going to say, yay, our healthcare center is going to you know, upgrade. Then in 2 months after they have made the building bigger and they have painted it,
It's empty.
And
you'd
also
rather
add
keep
on
it
that,
as a healthcare 2 center, just a minute, and then you focus on financing on you know, even our healthcare 2 centers. I do not think that for the biggest part that they are at the standard of what a healthcare 2 center should be, right? We have not yet even fully realized, right, what should be the minimum bar for each of these healthcare centers, for each of these doctors, their pay grade, for each of these let me say facilities in centers. But then we want to move something that hasn't met the bar for its own grade to an
something.
even bigger grade. I don't think
It's a
that's
bit overly ambitious.
Yes.
Okay, but at least the intent is good. I think we could credit the intent.
the intent when the people are
To inquire
dying.
into the intent would
When the
be
people are dying?
very, very
and
problematic.
the intent to advance this
I am
sector
very sure.
would be good.
I am very sure, as of today, people in Iguru right now, where you come from, people are dying because there is no electricity. So you have seen so many hospitals here. Water, they don't have water.
Bills, utility bills.
Almost 2 weeks, there is no water. People have been dying. No electricity. I did hear some story in Hoima, where someone died because there was
No power.
no power. You see, we should agree that hospitals are not looked at just by the building, by the manpower you have.
The
Because if you
facilities.
don't have medical interns currently, and you are, Mr. Moderator, you are telling us that there is a commitment. When people are dying in hospitals, there is a commitment. How sure are you that maybe the supplementary budget, which is expected to come, maybe you know how Uganda, we don't have financial discipline here in Uganda, that you are going to see in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, you're going to see a lot of supplementary budgets. How sure are you that you never know the budget, the supplementary budget, whether it will come in the
Is
fourth
the
quarter?
problem
How
the
are you sure?
legislators or something?
No.
No, the problem is about governance. Lack of governance systems here in Uganda. It's not even that, it's even beyond the parliament. But the governance system. We have a problem of systems here in Uganda.
We do not follow systems, right?
That no systems at all. And also selfishness of individuals who are in government. Corruption. Selfishness. That today you can manage to appropriate money. Almost 500 million to cater for newspapers of a certain family. But you have medical interns who are demanding only 86 something billion to cater, but they are not looked at. They are in our villages looking after cows. Yet they are supposed to save your mothers and brothers in hospital.
Fair enough. Yes, Ivan, as we take a short commercial break.
Before, since health is a department I've trained and worked with as a biomedical engineer, basically, even with the current investment in health, our health status would not be the way it looks, but it has been the way we even handle priorities. Our health budget, majority of it has been in aids and donations. We have been getting a lot of money, almost 50% of the budget has been via your World Health Organization and USAID. They have been the biggest funders of our health budget for the last couple of decades, not even years. But the reason why the difference is not always a progressive one is because of the priorities. Because in a country where you have no national health insurance policy, and in a country where you don't invest much in primary health care, in a country where a health budget, like now in this current one, is addressed as a human capital development, but when you go to deep in digesting it, it doesn't feel the real clear challenges it should be addressing. So as we close on health, I think for health would be one of the best ways for this government to manage, especially now that it has a young population. But there are other factors that I feel the government also was not prepared, like the issue of interns. Why? There have been increasing institutions. Even today, funny institutions will also teach medicine. But government needed to have a plan.
I think for as long as they are accredited by INCHE.
No, but we also hear issues of expired courses and what. This is a country where these things are not by surprise.
Everything is possible.
The National Planning Authority has no framework of what human resource capacity we need in the health sector. Even you can't blame some of these people occupying. There is a bust. You have a whole number of doctors in the market and you have demand, but you don't have the money. It is an issue of planning. You never reflect. We have always planning frameworks that we pay people to see it, entities a whole year to draft a country plan. But by the time you have senior health officers, not even internees, going on strike, that shows there is a big problem. Because health is an entity where you can plan basing on demand. We always go to hospitals to give birth. We hear they capture data. It is taken to NIRA. It means we always hear you both read statistics. Our population has grown by this. Government should be using those statistics to its advantage. Is why when he brought the issue of the procedure in the budgeting process, it is an issue that we always skip, but it always pays heavily when it comes to implementation. That today, the first day the budget was released, the Minister of Health comes up and says our budget won't be enough. Because in the procedure levels, it was to a level that even the leadership of Uganda Medical Association should be closely involved. These institutions teaching medicine, government through National Council should regulate numbers to capacities it can fit. And where it doesn't fit, innovate outside markets. Like it was doing before to export to Kenya and what. But now if all internees, yes?
You're advocating for us to export our doctors.
They are exporting.
You need to
If you
export.
didn't
That
know.
is the way of
No,
making
no.
money. How do you make
Because
money when you
how-
do?
Really?
Why do we go to school if we can't
You're
do
talking
it?
about insufficiency in the health sector.
And now,
And at the same time, you're
exporting
proposing that we
interns
should
to get
export
return.
medical professionals.
Moderator,
aren't
should I
you
tell you, in
contradicting yourself?
anything there is return. Once you do something without economic return, politically,
So
currently,
you want to
if you're Uganda,
prioritize the monetary benefit that
if you're
comes,
Uganda,
because Uganda
that comes
cannot
with,
manage
that
that.
comes with remitting
No,
money
let me tell you this.
vis-a-vis someone's services in the healthcare sector.
If you're Ugandan, you have an idle internee who can't go to hospital because he's not paid, he has no PPE, he has a poor working condition, but you're very sure in Kenya he will be given that. Once this person goes, there is revenue get from this person being
To
in
pay
Kenya.
more people.
As former diploma, not even.
now, are you?
Let me, one
Okay,
second.
let's take a short
One
commercial
second.
break.
One
Cut off.
second.
No.
One second.
We are
You've
doing-
even been
we are
said
doing
one
a short
second
commercial
you
break.
can't afford because
One
there are
second.
remittances
We are doing a
this
short
person
commercial
will
break.
remit.
But
One second,
I find very controversial statement.
But
One
it's
second.
not controversial.
Now, let me tell you, Mr. Moderator. You see me here, I'm taking as a moderator.
In 1 minute.
Yes, as a moderator.
Mm.
Today, as of today,
Export.
students of medicine, pharmacy, dental, optometry, medical radiography from different universities, we have a second cohort that have finished exams. Instead of those people coming, now we have those ones who have not been deployed. Now we have these ones who have finished.
The traffic you.
So would you be happy to see that these ones are turning to be thieves on road? They don't have what to do. They rather go outside.
Alice, your comment.
Just that. Too, in a very in a nutshell. Sorry. It would work if the people. Well, if you look at it in this way, that when you're exporting our personnel, you're taking a doctor that would be underpaid here to be paid what they deserve out there, and we're getting revenue to pay. Let me say we are getting money that would pay for like 5 interns, right? So we are exporting one person, but we are being able to pay 5 interns here to save more lives. That way it would work.
That's also an utopian analysis.
I don't agree with that.
Is it a reality?
I don't
The last
agree
thing
with
about-
that.
Is it that simple?
No, but this has
are
been
making
a
it
culture
so
in the past.
simplistic.
No,
There has been a.
We are doing a short commercial
You
break.
advanced
guys.
Yes.
intent
We
together. You
I've
advanced
taken
intent earlier in
I've
this
taken
this
a
We are
conversation.
doing a
issues
short commercial
of
break.
health.
I also get that 1 minute. You see, I don't agree with them. The problem is not that we need our people to go out there. We shall create a problem of scarcity here.
Exactly.
So what
There
we
is
need
no
to do,
scarcity
but
when
we are
you
not
have
able to pay
excess.
them.
More so in the health
Currently, you
sector.
have excess.
We are
we
not
don't
able to
have
pay them.
excess. The issue is we can't afford them.
We don't have excess, but we
Can't
cannot afford
Yeah, we
them.
can't
Exactly.
afford them. What
So we
can
leave
need-
them to
We,
go.
So
we
let's
need
find
no,
out
we
to
don't leave
afford
them to
them.
go.
No.
Because
We
at
need- you
the
find
end
money
of
to
the
pay
day,
them.
you're
We need to
losing.
find
Someone
money
who is
to
we
pay
need to
them.
task the government.
You find
to
money to
pay
pay
them.
them,
By
but
exporting some to get
you don't
money,
let them
we
go.
don't let them
This
go.
one.
You find
But
money
you
to
have
pay them.
failed as per now.
No, you
No.
find money to pay them.
We have not yet failed.
Viewers, we are due
as,
for
as Uganda,
a
but
short
we
commercial
need
break.
the government to take a
And-
lead on this. Otherwise, we are doomed.
We thank you for making a date with us. And yeah, just don't move a muscle because as you can see here, things are. I am about to lose control of the ship. I'm saying it. But let's see you shortly after this.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. So, health is very important, and I understand why it has sort of created a certain, you know, energy in the room, because we all agree that, you know, health goes to the cornerstone of our existence. So, but yeah, just our final comments regarding health, then we can move to education. So, what should be done for us to have a robust healthcare sector?
Yeah, for me, as thank you, by the way. I don't agree more of adding more funds to, like, an employee to add them more funds. But you know, looking at you know, salary has never been a motivator. Yeah, you may give us a lot of money. So the reason why doctors have never always been like satisfied with the funding is because that, you know, there are many more things that make sure that we are satisfied as employees to the government. The housing, the allowances. Then by the time even your salary comes, you are at least a bit of covered. You have a bit of saving you can make. So you might feel like they must look at the nitty-gritties that an employee needs. They need to look at exactly what do our doctors need, equipment, do they have necessary, you know, when they ask for any requirement, do they have that supplementary money that can come in and help them? So basically, we need more of looking at their needs than looking at only as the funding on top. For example, you can give a doctor 4 million. At the end of the day, you make them live like in a pigsty. So we need to look at a bigger what perspective, just than only not like they need salary, they need arrears. No, we need to look at the allowances, the benefits, so that someone gets to work knowing that I have this kind of benefit than just waiting for a monthly check.
Okay.
So that's my
fair enough. Kato, the health sector. What
Yeah.
should be done?
I think what should be done is, I expect in the first quarter of this financial year to come up with a supplementary, because we have nothing to do, to come up with a supplementary budget to support the health sector. Because we have nothing, we shall continue, because we have set a precedent which may not go as long as we change the political system in this country. So we have set a precedent that we shall always come up with supplementary budgets. So I expect the government to come up in the first quarter, provide a supplementary budget. One, not only to look at the money power, but also proving the infrastructure within the health systems in Uganda. But also look at other sectors whereby the health sector cannot function without them.
Okay.
And I also expect the government to take all initiatives, all steps as of yesterday, to make sure that deployment of medical interns and house workers are deployed immediately to save the Ugandans, your brothers and sisters, and our grants in different hospitals.
Yes. What should be done, Alice?
I am going to disagree a bit with Laban. I think what is more important, even more than enacting a supplementary budget, is the utilization of the funds. Because we're going to enact a supplementary budget, and again, if the appropriation and the utilization of those funds is flawed, we are going to still have the same problems. So again, would you advise that we have another supplementary budget? Again, this is causing, you're solving a problem by causing another problem. Already, we have also agreed that we have a very huge public debt. We don't have money. We do not have where we're going to get it from, you know. So I think most importantly, to address the health sector issue, is reassessing how they are prioritizing and how they're utilizing these funds. For example, just recently, as listening to a talk show in the morning, and I heard that there is a substantial amount of money that has been allocated to condoms for road workers. You know, I do not say that it's a very minute issue, but I'm saying if you are allocating a huge sum of money, right, to that issue, yes, it is in the health sector, but I'm sure we have more pressing health sector needs than whether road workers have got condoms, right? So prioritizing what is important, what is the most important in the health sector, you know, for us to be able to better utilize the available funds without further creating more debt.
Yeah, yes.
Quite interesting. Thank you for your submission. Basically, our health sector, first, there have been traditional problems of our health sector that have held far from where we inherited it from the colonial setting. First of it, I think the basic ways now the current state can go away from them is first from implementation, deal with issues of primary health care. If we had the implementation of primary health care, things like physical exercises in the system, things like sensitization or nutrition, you would reduce the burden you incur on costs of treating non-communicable diseases like pressure, cancer, because they are going to take a big sum of the budget, because these are very expensive diseases to treat. So that would be first, Ministry of Health should identify how do you loosen the burden, put enough effort on primary health care, like put on immunization, see a way of improving at a primary level, at a prevention level, to reduce burden on itself by investing more energy there. Still, the issue of infrastructure development, there is an aid that the healthcare is being taken up by technology and monetarization. Today, the healthcare is leveraging on diagnosis, which is by computers, by what. If still they put that in form of healthcare, that the issues of diagnosis and prevention are put at a very low scale level compared to these days, you get cancer in the third stage, is when you can afford to get a CT scan to know your cancer stage. I think infrastructure development is key, but also the biggest disease this current government is having with health is a failure to recognize the need for a national health insurance policy. I think that would save it first in terms of funding, but second in terms of administration. Failure by government to adopt some of these measures, especially policy ones, is a bit costly. That our health sector operates in just like an emergency ward. Yeah? Anytime a patient is dying, anytime one is being saved, as if we are, anytime an ambulance is making an alarm, I think from purposes of planning, they should be much on that, but also purposes of policy. Because the issue of the current surge and traffic in interns, even we are crying interns, but the unemployed doctors who are not even interns, but they are waiting for adverts nowhere. All that can be set in policy, and policy is attached to planning. You can't be teaching a course massively, yet you've even not widened its employment opportunities. In the private sector, how best can you support people in the private sector to employ some of these members? But as long as you remain not innovative enough with solutions and remedies, you will still have much burden, especially now. These are human resource. There are labor organizations, there are Uganda medical associations and groups. You need to have enough frequency interaction with these labor unions. First, to regulate, but secondly, to innovate more workspace. I gave you the best alternative of solving traffic and jam is by exporting and getting remittances to improve the welfare.
You still insist.
Yes? It is practical. If you find someone from a country, why would we import Cuban doctors here? Do you think the Cubans don't want to stay in Cuba? But why was the president proposing to import? And we all know the purposes of importing to our budget. Imports take away. They don't bring any gain. When you import, you lose. But this is a man, after 40 years of administration, he had an idea of importing doctors. But now today we have interns we can't take. Just 1 year ago, President Museveni was talking of importing Cuban doctors. Today, just 1.5 years later, he can't afford to employ interns. He's on interns. These are Ugandans. His employers. We employ him to work on our behalf. I think we have had too much respect for people in power in this country that they forgot that they are the ones working for us. Yet we put them there to work for us. But because we have failed us to push them out, we fall victims. So they need to awaken, but current as it stands, in the current budget, let it stress more on solving issues of primary health care to avoid a financial burden.
All right, fair enough. So let's talk about education for a bit, and I'll begin with you, Alice. The question of universal primary education, universal secondary education, and whether they are actually working for our education system. But also, if you look at the budget currently, and of course, the minister's statement is that there's a plan to, for example, revamp or to renovate some of these traditional schools to, get them back to their feet. But also the questions around the new curriculum and financing it so that it can, see the light of day, effectively. So the education, is it, because like I said earlier on, if a government can make education affordable, healthcare affordable, transport affordable, then I think it has taken away the bigger burden from the taxpayer. So education, just I don't know, what do you make of it?
Well, to begin with, one of the biggest successes there has been in the education sector, I could say for the government altogether, for the regime, has been UPE and USE schools. This is one of those projects that has actually managed to outlive more than...
I'm a product of UPE.
Since 98, we are 25 years of UP and US.
It has managed to outlive its life expectancy, I can say. We thought that it would expire much sooner, but even up to now, we still have them. So that's on the commendable bit. Now, on the other side, on the quality, it is one thing to have. It's another thing to have what is of the required quality. We have them, but what products are they embossing? Are they giving out? What is the quality of the education they give you? So if the government actually recognizes the fact that the quality has deteriorated to a level whereby it should be necessary to revamp the system to make these schools affordable, because what happens is that if these schools become a much better grade, right? If they have much better quality of education being given out, then people are going to go for them more than they do for the private institutions. The reason why private institutions are selling a lot, of course, is because their quality of education is better, right? So if we improve the quality of these schools, it goes a long way in improving the general level of education of the country, because people are going to be able to go for these schools because they are not only affordable per se, but they're also providing quality, right? That someone sees where their time is going. Money is not the only resource. Time is a big resource as well. Someone could refuse to take their child to a free UPE school, right? Because they think that is time wasted. That's why I'm saying that time is a very important resource that should be looked at as well. So if there is gains, there is profit to someone's time being spent in a UPE school, they're not going to finish there, and they're unable to compete favorably with private institutions to go for secondary school. Then I think it goes a long way in improving education sector altogether.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Laban, as I'll take your comments regarding, of course, the education sector, but also let us shift a bit to where money is going largely, the parish development model. And before you came, he made an argument for the PDM, and he advanced arguments that portrayed that this is sort of going to transform our economic setup. It is going to provide money in households and things like that. So I don't know. I compare our story to Singapore. Singapore got independence in 1965, 3 years after us, and it is said that we were at the same economic standing at the time. But today, if you compare us, we are 2 worlds apart. And what Singapore did was and even if you read Lee Kuan Yew's stories, that they made sure the private sector was working. small and medium enterprises were working.
Geographical
So
disadvantage.
your comment
Yeah, in
regarding
Africa,
education,
they are in
but also let's move towards
Well,
ventures like the parish development model, Emyoga, youth
Geographical
library program that
disadvantage.
government
We are landlocked.
is can we have one where government is putting so much money? I don't know, is it enabling us to create wealth?
Thank you, moderator. With the education sector, which is part of capital, I did say that at first, that the human capital development was allocated 9.5 trillion, which is an estimate of, I think, around 18%.
It is 18%.
So, what does it mean? That also education sector is part of it. Of course, we should agree that Uganda has continued to increase education accessibility. As of today, when you look at primary school, the people's enrolled is 8.8 million young people enrolled in primary school. Then we have around 833,000 in secondary, and then we have 174,000 in institution of higher learning. With the launch of the new curriculum, it called for the increase of new teachers and training. But also, that also caused, as we have broken down the enrollment of different young people enrolled in different institutions, both in primary, secondary, and high institution of learning. It caused one, for increase in the expenditure within the education sector, but also the system. I am happy that the education ministry came up with the system. Is it called IMIS?
IMIS, yeah.
Is Education Management
Information System. IMIS.
No, that it will not only help in simplifying work, but also to reduce corruption in the education sector. You remember how people would have
Ghost
teachers
students.
and even ghost students
Even
in
ghost schools.
in government institutions. That, for example, a school says we have 50,000 students, and in reality, we have 5,000. And they are ghost students, which has been increasing the government expenditure. Illegal. So, that calls for different initiatives to be taken by the government to improve the education sector. But you see, we should agree that whatever Matiakas, almost 70%, what the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development presented there, it may be different. At times, that budget is prepared to impress the donor, because you expect to get how many from grants?
2 point.
I think 3 point something.
3.22.
3.22.
So it is prepared to sometimes to impress those who are ignorant,
Majority of that.
the donor. But what is, see, because the government is planning to construct, let me tell you this, the government is planning to, for this financial year, the government is planning to construct, I think, 115 seed schools in the country. But do you know what? That some of the schools they want to construct, the land they want to construct, even they have never secured land titles. Can you imagine? As of today, no land titles for those seed schools that the government is going to construct. But they will not come to tell you how in the budget they will make sure that they will secure the land titles. Because securing a title, you are students from School of Law. You know what the process it takes. Altogether. So whether the government presents a statement in the budget regarding the education sector that this is what we are going to do, which looks to me to be impressive, but in the reality, it is different, what will be done on the ground. That is my comment on the education sector.
So the wealth creation.
Then the wealth creation. When you look at the pillars, all different pillars, as to why all contained within these initiatives taken by government to improve the household income, they are very impressive. When you look at the parish development board, the Myoga fund, they look to be impressive on the paper. But what is the reality? Moderator, you are aware that I'm a member of the National Youth Council.
Yes, I know.
I have happened to be a chairperson
From
of the
Kawepe.
sub-county in the Kawepe division. But the truth is, should I tell you what? I even don't know what is happening with the PDF.
Is it because you haven't
Because I was excluded.
interested yourself?
I got interested. I went. I was told that, you know what, for you, you are not NRM.
Are these mere allegations?
They are not allegations. Even as of today, I can take you to the person who chased me from all those meetings. Do you know what? Because in my race, I was contesting with an NRM person. Are you getting? I won him. So now when it came to parish development model, he won you. He is the person won you that was taken. Yet, because you know affirmative action. Affirmative action should be considered here. That youth should get a share for that money. I get it. But as of today, even I don't know. Oh, my youth, the population, young people, they always ask me, yeah, what's up with the parish development money? I told them, that one is for the yellow people because I have not gotten money. But also, also because I was saying,
Kato, it's only fair that we consider that your opinion.
Let him go through.
Because I think there are people who don't belong to the NRM exactly, but have benefited from these programs.
To a certain extent, but to what extent? To what extent? But of course, I'm going to bring out that person in a broad daylight, the people who refuse the youth to get that money from my parish, who excluded us from that meeting, they will be brought to book because we cannot, because it is our money. As I've said, that those initiatives taken by the government, they look to be impressive, but when you look at it,
it isn't few.
Because, for example, my village of Lumumba Hall has around 400 youth. 400 youth. But I can assure you that by the end of this financial year, they may not see the money. Let me tell you, Mr. Moderator, and my fellow youth here, as I have said, that those initiatives, when you look at the paper, if some of you have looked at the paper, work of the Myoga, of the PDF, so impressive. You may think that Ugandans are going to, but what happens on the ground? Corruption. You have seen how people are being arrested. I want to say, and clearly state, that as long as we don't work on our governance system in Uganda, whether the ruling government brings over how 15 initiatives, even if it's 1 year, whether you appropriate the 15 trillion for that budget, as long as we don't work on our political governance systems in Uganda, we shall be wasting time. And I don't expect anything from the parish development money.
Okay, that's your opinion. Yes, Were.
Thank you.
You made an argument for PDM earlier on, and perhaps it is now your time to convince Laban.
Okay.
Laban will only be
Me,
convinced that
let
the
him-
overhauling of the government.
Thank you. Still, I will insist. I told my colleagues here that, and Laban made a very nice, interesting point, and said the paperwork. You know,
It's impressive.
it's very impressive. When you look at these programs and paperwork, you can clap your hands and you be, you know, happy with the government. But still, I will insist that the way things are implemented, yeah, we have that. We have that vice that we have. It's not even corruption. The vice is the individuals within the government.
The governance, not individuals.
Because they find that what makes the government is the individuals
Anyway, individuals
at
are
the end of the day. So basically, we have these programs. When you read them, you'll say, for example, now this budget, the youth have been allocated 60 billion. And when you think about the 60 billion,
Allocated where?
Skilling the youth.
Skills.
Oh, okay.
60 billion, and when you look at the number of youth that are being skilled practically, they are less than even 50%, even 20.
Maybe in a single figure.
Meaning the problem may not be, the problem is that every time someone gets used to the system, they know how to move about this whole system. So we need to change this whole system if we want things to be done. We need to, I would advise the next president, or whoever it will be,
Your knowledge doesn't work on the
very
time.
serious.
to think about these things in a different way. Yeah, how are we going to do this differently? Because you look at all the programs we came from. I'm also a beneficiary of UPE, sir. Our government schools, UPE, we used to be in the competitive schools. Districts, you would even be wanting to listen to that, hey, first grade is what. But now we have channeled private. No parent, no sober parent who has a bit of enough income wants to take their kids in government schools. No sober parent. They rather pay the 1.5 million in a private school than take the 50,000 for, because primary right now I understand 50,000. For those who have kids that you can know. 50,000 shillings or 40. But even up to now, 40 years down the road, we have students studying from trees, within trees. We have students moving with empty stomachs to school. So the problem may not be that we are allocating money here, we're allocating money there even the seed schools. Right now, they did a massive recruitment for the IFMIS officers, Minister of Education, last month. I think the interviews are even going on right now. And then the OAG, that is the Office of Auditor General, is doing a verification of employees across the country. And then all these things are being done. But at the end of the financial year, still, we shall have the same problems
Duplication.
all the time. Now, you see, every time I pity my colleagues or my brothers and sisters coming from these islands around, the Buvuma, the Kalangala, yeah? Those ones don't even receive these services. Yeah, I want us to look at things in a different avenue. Still, I'll pose a question to my president of the what? Your position, sir?
Youth Council.
Youth Council, yeah. Can we have you representing us? You know, when you say youth, you're only looking at Laban, who's looking for allowances from what? For the medical interns. We have youth who are in primary, who are in secondary down there, who have not received any benefit from the government programs. So can we have you talk to your patron, that is the Minister of Education, right?
No. The Youth Council is an independent institution, but falls under Minister of Gender.
Okay, your patrons, rather. Telling
patrons.
them, you don't have any patrons there?
That is patronage, man.
Because I understand your NRM.
No, just
The minister in charge.
I think just you can say the stakeholders and the MDAs involved, or that are in charge, should be addressed to some of these concerns.
Because
You should put a disclaimer.
Patron.
thank you for that insight. Now, you would want these things put in practice. Right now, I cannot take my child in a government school because we find that the teachers are not well facilitated.
Absenteeism.
The absenteeism.
They're never there.
There's no food. So right now that we are having, the issue is not even when they place this insight of expired courses. Me, I looked at expired education system. It needs to be channeled, the whole thing toppled, because right now we have you can go to the senior 6 varsity and you tell them what have you learned, and they can't tell you. What have you learned? They can't tell you. So we need to find. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues here prior to this whole panel setup. He was in a school where we had so many students, and you find that those who got principal passes were like 10% of the whole class, and that's what is happening out there. Where our jobs that we look at after senior 6 is being a border man. Uganda must change, my brother.
Yes.
Just to weigh in a bit here.
Come after.
There seems to be a recurring problem. I think if you've been following the discussion very closely, it started from health, we went to education, now we are on the PDM, and there's a recurring problem of implementation, right? That's where Laban comes in to say that, you know, the problem is with the individuals in the governance, right? And the gentleman over there comes in and says, no, we need to overhaul the entire system, right? But I think that the issue may not be with the system in itself, but in creating checks and balances, well, at least from a legal view, right? How do we create checks and balances in the system, in the governance system, so that even though there is different people coming into the system, or even if they're the very same people in the system, their powers, their abilities are controlled, right? So that if they're implementing what is on paper, on the budget, how do we make sure that the people that are supposed to implement the paper, the impressive paperwork, actually do it as it is on the paperwork to make for impressive groundwork, impressive implementation, right? We do not have that. We have a lot of corruption. We have a lot of complacence in government systems, in government entities. You find that government workers go for work at like 10 a.m. And then at 3 p.m. they're out. It is done, right? There is no, there are no those checks and balances that enable for them to be followed up, to, enable accountability of their work. So even more than the individuals, because I highly believe that even with the current system, if you got a new set of leaders, in fact, if you transplanted the entire, if you transplanted the entire ANT team into the government right now, right, and you removed every single NRM person, I think with the current system, that has a lot of looseness in accountability, we still have the same problems. I mean, if you have that amount of power, it is very hard for you to not use it. You know that you can, for fact, swindle all of this amount of money and you get away with it because there is no measures put in place for you to make sure that you have to account for that money. You're punished in case you do not account for that money, right? Even if there were different people, trust me, would end up with the same problem. So what is the solution? The system. How do we infuse accountability structures, checks and balances into the system to ensure that whatever we have on the budget for the financial year is being implemented on ground as well, to provide for the ultimate Uganda that we envision with the budget that we have.
Yeah,
I think now,
fantastic.
Just a simple analogy, that's a simple metaphor.
30 seconds, please.
When a child when we have a village home, and then someone's family, the kids are thieves, the kids they rape the constitution, the kids do all atrocities to the neighbors. As an elder of the village, the problem is not the kids. The problem is the father of the house. I'm not so. Once the father of the house is disciplined, once the father of the house is, so I think Uganda, we need to change the father of the house. So that is my own thing.
Fair enough. So, Ivan, we need to shift gears. You have discussed so much about expenditure.
I was watching.
How shall we use the money? How shall we put the money in health and etc. But one important fact is how can we generate the money? All right. Uganda Revenue Authority expects to collect 29
trillion.
this financial-
27.4 trillion actually from revenue
27.4.
collection.
Yes.
Domestic revenue
And
collection.
it is proposing certain measures, for example, how to improve the tax administration, how to
limit exemptions.
and all those things, but also how to ensure that the local government is effective in its, work. So I don't know. In terms of revenue collection, do you think the target by URA is achievable?
Thanks a lot. A lot has been discussed as I was watching. I would like to applaud my sister here. She has made some solutions very clear. I'll run in a hurry in the interest of time. We began from education. I will not shy away. I'm a product of also the very education system, like we are all seated. The issues, current issues, we have had our education have traditional problems, but we are now moving to a generation that needs to leverage on the current environment and global demands to also modify school education to have products that compete. Especially in the funding of STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I think government should take key interest in adopting technology and on leveraging on the current global scale indicators for this sector. Coming to the PDM, I feel sorry for my brother who doesn't qualify according to his
color.
He never, we may say not even the color, but not even the status. He may not qualify. But the issue of putting people to a money economy is first by working on the environment. As long as the high prices of food, high prices of fuel, high prices of healthcare, high price of just salt and sugar, or fuel or transport is still high, it is very hard to meet a target of pushing people to a monetarized economy. Reason, their expenditures overwhelm their income. So that is just basic knowledge. That, by the way, I expected the new permanent secretary to finance to do better, because we always watched him, also always have interest in reading economics. Even when we are in engineering field, he looked very bright, but we are seeing he has also adopted to the DNA.
New individuals to the same system.
This is what she mentioned. Ngobi is now purely Mukada. We expect now results of that fashion. Now let's come to tax revenue collection. Our targets in the past financial year were 25 trillion. By May, we had only managed to raise 21 trillion. That was 1 year to 30th June. There is no way practically we would raise 4 trillion shillings. That is $1 million US. Practically it is impossible. But it showed we had a deficit. Even by the time the budget was being read, finance minister assured us that we would raise $1 million US in 1 month. Money which in a normal financial year you collect in around 2 months. After 1 point something month. But maybe money would be returned from consolidations and back. That may be to his calculations. But when we look at our revenue targets, the healthy ones, if we were to be, because any country you need to widen every year, annually. In this current generation, or in a capitalistic country like Uganda, you need to widen your tax base. But the biggest problem with Uganda is its innovation in its base is still very low. Its appetite increases so much to spend, but its appetite to generate has been the problem. That even with the current target of 27.4 trillion, practically when you look at the people they target, the fashion itself, the model they are using, you don't see any innovation in the model. Who else is being increased on board? Because you have sent the PDM to be in the field. It means a lot of people are being pushed to be ready to be taxed. They are having money. They are going to spend. They are going to invest in SMEs. They are going to, you always send out money into programs. Those who benefited today in yoga, by now should be highly taxable. But when you look at the current framework, it is only public servants who are paying the sin for being a public servant in this generation, because it is now regressive. every year tax levels to public sector. The reason these doctors, their salary scale is looking low. Oh, what? It's because of they only the taxation bit of it alone. So you are I know honestly it won't meet its target, but it will come closer. Yeah, I am not one. I don't want to be maybe to predict in unpatriotic way, but basing on the environment they create from the planning itself, they limit the environment. There are a lot of avenues. When we saw them try to shift the gears, maybe to look for more money in the digitalized space, taxing it. This is an avenue you can tax, but how? At what rate? But because we have a challenge that our budgeting and planning, there are tools. There is economic return and political return. The political return has outweighed the economic return. That even sectors where we would say taxing would help improve our balance sheet, we have shied away because it will affect the political return. The big number of people in the informal sector that have always, because it's 80% now young people, over 41% unemployed. Whenever you have a big burden of people unemployed, you're spending on them, but as government, your plan to put these people to work and be taxable, we never saw it in the budget. We see the skilling hub which has been allocated 60 billion. This is an NRM project by cadres who went to Kyankwan's. And only 28,000 youth ever since it started. I saw you once helped some in Nakawa. I need to credit you for that. Have benefited. But when we look at the essence, the practicability, that if we are only working at a pace of 28,000, how best will you have reached 100,000? By that time, how many youth will be in the country? Will maybe even 90% by then. So my advice to government first is to improve on its planning. The biggest failure of the tax burden now is the poor performance of local governments. Local governments in this country have been buried. Even their ghosts have left the grave and moved out. You look at even their funding. You don't want some from Bududa where I come from. Because when you look at Bududa on the budget paper, it is even not pocket money for harming. Their funding, as long as our local government are still poor, local governments very destabilized, very exhausted, they can't generate revenue. They are now relying on President Museveni will visit us, we kneel down for a road. President Museveni will visit us, we kneel down for a city school. A local government should have capacity to push the citizens down, the wananchi, to production. Should have capacity to do budgeting, but also creating its own revenue collection. But now when things were centralized, the few will have to carry the burden on behalf of the many.
Fantastic. Alice, your parting shots, but also a comment on revenue collection.
Revenue collection.
Or generation, really.
Oh, right, altogether. I think that, again, like I was saying that earlier, we could generate all of the money in the world. We could collect all the money in the world. But still, it goes back to how we are going to spend it. If we do not spend it well, right? We also we eliminate that goodwill that we have from taxpayers as well, from donations, from grants, to be able to put it back. So I think the most basic and fundamental step in generating and creating income for us as a country is in spending the one that we have. How are we spending the money that we have? If at all we are given money, for example, for the past financial year, and we're given this amount of money in grants, and we're given this amount, and we've gotten this amount in taxation, how have we spent it to satisfy the taxpayer to the point that the taxpayer will be inclined to pay that money? We have a lot of people that default, in tax collection. And why do you think that is? Well, we could argue that people are stingy and everything, but in the bare essence, even a stingy person would have a lot less burden contributing to taxes if those taxes are going to come back to help them, right? But a person is not seeing where their money is going. Take a cent, taziraba, right? But there's a common saying, take a cent, whatever. Tell about what take a cent is. they're putting money into a government that is being that is being that is gaining a huge public opinion in corruption. Recently, we had the office of the Prime Minister having a scandal. I mean, the office of the Prime Minister, the leader of government business in the country, has a scandal in no less iron sheets. You see, if it was, you know, if it was something
Serious
like,
material.
some serious material would be like, well, it is iron sheets, for crying out loud. How many iron sheets would you need to build a house? I mean, even if they got that aside, my point is, yes, the very, very most basic, most primary level in being able to create for us income sources, whichever way it is, taxation, grants, donations, is in properly spending what we have and what we have received in the past. Parting shots. It has been a very wonderful time. This panel has been very interesting. I've been very glad to share this space with all of you. To our viewers, thank you very much for listening to us. It has been a pleasure having this conversation, and I wish there was a way we could interact with the viewers in real time. It would be, I think it would be a much more interesting discussion therein. But even then, we hope to have you again and again, and you could also keep on interacting with us in our private capacities.
All right, thank you. Laban, your comments regarding revenue and your parting shots.
Yeah, first of all, I will talk about the revenue bit. Then I will talk about the public debt and my parting shot. When you look at the budget as presented by the minister, he said that the revenue, both domestic and non-tax, both revenue and non-tax revenues are 29.6.
29.
And then we have local revenue, which is amounting to, I think, 287 billion. That is from local government, each and everything. That money cannot be raised without taking initiative
To invest.
to make sure that the money, our resource envelope of 52.7 trillion is financed. One is that the URA should make the use of ICT systems to make sure that there is tax administration and also reduce tax evasion. That is a very critical point. But also the government should take initiatives, and also the Parliament of Uganda, to make sure that useless exemptions on people, we call the hyenas, is regulated. That is how we shall be able to finance our resource envelope of 52.7 trillion. Mr. Moderator and colleagues, when you look at the Uganda's debt, public debt, as of December 2022, it was 80.8 trillion, which is equivalent, I think, to 21 trillion USA dollars. But it is projected as of 30th of this month, it will be 88.8 trillion. That is our debt. However much you may look at it being reduced from 48, because when you consider the physical charter responsibility, the charter for fiscal responsibility, that urges the government to keep
Below threshold.
the threshold of 50%. We look at it as it has reduced, but we are almost also nearing the threshold. When you look at our public, of course it has reduced to 40, from 48 point something percent to 46. But we are almost at the threshold. And let me tell you, things are not going well, but instead it may be worse. If we don't mind about our financial indiscipline, corruption, a lot of expenditure goes to individuals. That should be regulated, very regulated. It should be regulated. But also the government should mind about the young people of this country, because we are the majority and we are the major stakeholder in taking the initiative. The health sector, the medical intern, is a very critical one for them. Otherwise, my parting shot is that I serve always a great pleasure to always be hosted on the civic space to discuss important issues happening in our country, because it is the only way that we shall have stories to tell to the next generation.
Thank you. Mr. Uri, your final words.
Thank you, Kidega. And yeah, a lot has been said, and I'll still insist that our debt ratio and all that, it's healthy. For me, I would still insist that, we have collections. I should even commend URA. Apparently, I have interacted with some of the people who work in URA, and you can really see that
there is growth.
There is growth. They are doing a very, very tremendous work. They do even at times nearing to their targets, by at least 3 trillion. You find that if it's 27 trillion, they will achieve at least 23 trillion. So, meaning they are doing something. But on the other side, looking at how our budget is 52 trillion, where else can we get the other monies? Nowadays, that the donations are all reducing due to reasons we know, that policies are not favored by the outside team or the funders outside. So we need to find a way of getting these funds. Though the way we do it is not, elaborative, and it's not really transparent. But still, I would insist we need to get a debt to finance ourselves at some point. We have to look at what is our aim to become self-reliant as a country. According to the Ghana Bureau of Statistics, you find that 54% of the goods produced by local Ugandans down here are not up to standard for exportation. So we do rely on more of importing than exporting. So we have the government has a lot of challenges to deal with, but as the new generation, we need to look up at these things with an iron hand. We need to task the youth leader here. We need to tell them to,
There is a modulator
to represent us. And in turn, when we also get there, the problem we have a disease is when someone gets there. There's a way Laban will forget, we may, But all I can say is that I'm very confident about this panel, that they may not change. But I want us to look up to ourselves, that we can do better than what these people have done. If we don't learn, then the next generations will live to cry, to testify that we never did anything. So as my parting shots, I would like to thank Kidega and the panelists, and also thank Civic Space for this opportunity. And I'll be open to any further discussions in case being invited upon to, through these, we need to educate our own age mates about these things. And I'm happy that we have a lady here who is doing a good job. Never stop, the sky is the limit. And thank you, Laban and Ivan. Let's always keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, of course, Ivan, Alice, Laban, and Were. Thank you for your time. Of course, to Rashid and the technical team, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right at 2 p.m. Well, that is it from us. You've heard it all. I don't want to dilute anything and anything. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.